Hello students. So students, if you remember in our last Zoom session, we discussed about some abiotic components which includes air, soil and water. Okay, so initially we discussed about air and how air is closely associated with the survival of living things. Okay, and we also discussed about the air pollution. Now in this video we are going to discuss about the other two natural resources, that is water and soil. So we'll begin with water. Okay, so first of all let us discuss what is the role of water in everyday life. So we all know that water occupies a very large area of Earth's surface and it is also found underground. Some amount of water exists in the form of water vapor in the atmosphere as well. So basically it is available on Earth's surface also, below the Earth's surface also, and also in the atmosphere. Most of this water which is there on the Earth's surface is found in seas and oceans, and hence it is saline. That means it is salty, right? The fresh water or the water which we can drink is either found in the frozen state, in the ice caps at the two poles, and on snow covered mountains, or they are available in the form of rivers, lakes and ponds. Okay, but still if you compare the two quantities you can easily understand that the availability of fresh water is comparatively very less, and also it varies from place to place. Like in certain areas we have more amount of underground water, so there the availability of the fresh water is more. Okay, but at the same time we have certain places where the availability of underground water is less, so there they face scarcity of drinkable water, right? So it is basically something which varies from place to place. Practically if you see, every summer most of the places have to face shortage of water. You must have heard in the news channels also, right, that so and so area of our country or even our state is facing water shortage. Also in rural areas where water supply system is not very flourish or advanced, we can say, there people are forced to spend considerable amount of time in fetching water from far away sources. So if you discuss all these points you can understand that water is very much necessary. When I say water is necessary, I am mainly talking about the drinkable water. So for living beings that drinkable water is very much necessary. So why do we need water? If you you must have read this in the cell topic, that all the cellular processes take place in the water medium. All the reaction that take place within our body and within the cells occur between the substances that are dissolved in water. Substances are also transported from one place to another place in our body in the dissolved form. So for all this water medium is necessary, and hence the organisms need to maintain the water level in their body in order to stay alive. You must have heard that we can live without food for few months if you don't consume any food, but if you are having enough amount of water, then too you can stay alive, but without water you cannot survive very long. Similarly, all the terrestrial life forms require fresh water for this, because their bodies cannot tolerate or cannot get rid of high amount of dissolved salts in saline water. We cannot drink sea water or ocean water. We cannot have saline water. For that we need fresh water only. Thus water sources needs to be easily accessible for animals and plants to survive on land. Also if you see, water forms 2/3 of our body, and it keeps body's temperature normal. It is used for agriculture. Apart from our survival, it is also used for agriculture purpose, for domestic purpose and for industrial purpose. There also you cannot use saline water. You cannot do irrigation with the saline water, right? For that also you need to use fresh water. Only 3% of the water that is available on the surface, on the earth's surface, is fresh water, and remaining 97% resides in the ocean. Okay, so we can easily understand that the availability of drinkable water or water which can be used is very less. And still the humans have managed to survive this long. Like this problem must have been there for a very long time. जब से humans है तब से they are using water for various purpose, but still the drinkable water though like we are having issues with the underground water level, but then too, even now we are not in the situation where we don't have any fresh water left, right? So how this water is replenished? So yes, you must have guessed it. The answer is water cycle. We get continuous supply of fresh water thanks to the water cycle. Now what is water cycle? This you must have studied in lower standard also, but just a quick revision will do. The water cycle, which is also known as hydrologic cycle, is the continuous movement of water from the earth's surface to the atmosphere and then back to the ground. During water cycle, the initial step, or the first, it is a cycle actually. If we begin with the first step of evaporation, so evaporation is a process where liquid or solid is transferred into vapor. So the water that is present on the earth's surface, it gets evaporated due to the sun's light, okay, or due to the heat, and then it is given in, that water vapors are evaporated into the atmosphere. Then this water vapors, because they are light in weight, they move to the higher altitudes. At the same time, one process called transpiration also takes place in plants. Transpiration is equally important because through transpiration, lot of water vapors are added into the atmosphere. It is a biological process by which water is lost in the form of water vapor from the aerial parts of the plants called stomata. You must have heard about stomata. It is present on the lamina of the leaves. These are the small pores, okay. So from this stomata, water vapors are given out by the plants. We all know, or you have studied about photosynthesis. Water is a byproduct in photosynthesis. So every time the food is prepared in plants with the help of photosynthesis process, water is created, or water vapors are created as a byproduct. So that excess water vapors are given out through the stomata in the transpiration process. Okay, so once the water which is evaporated from the earth's surface and the vapors which are given out through the transpiration process, once they reach a particular higher altitude, there, because of the less temperature, they undergoes condensation process. We all know that at higher altitudes the temperature is comparatively less. So because of that less temperature, the vapors are again get converted into water droplets. Okay, that process is called condensation. Now these water droplets are initially very tiny, but then they combine to each other and they become bigger droplet, and they also become heavy. Once they are heavy enough, when they become too heavy to be in the floating state, they come down to the earth in the form of precipitation, or as we call rain. Okay, then this rainwater, either it goes into the sea or it goes into other water bodies like river, lakes, etc., etc., or the rainwater which falls on the earth, it also get sipped by the earth's crust or by the soil, and it also gets stored in the form of underground water. So likewise, this cycle of water get continuously this water cycle is present in the nature, and you can see the continuous movement of water from one state to the another. So because of this water cycle, the supply of the fresh water is continuously maintained on the earth. Now the next topic that we are going to cover is water pollution. So water pollution is a contamination of water bodies caused by the discharging pollutants directly or indirectly into the fresh and clean water bodies without adequate treatment. If like in industries, a lot of wastewater is generated. If that wastewater is treated with some chemicals, and then if it is released into the water bodies, then too we can minimize the water pollution. But if it is released into the water bodies as it is, then the harmful chemicals which are there into the wastewater is it gets mixed with the fresh water, and it also contaminate the fresh water. Now the main causes of water pollution are urbanization. As the number of cities are increasing in our country, the amount of wastewater that is generated is also increasing. and that leads to the higher level of water pollution. Industries and agriculture, these are also some causes of water pollution. Like industries, you can easily understand that wastewater is generated through the industries. Even in agriculture, lot of like use of lot of chemicals or fertilizers can lead to water pollution. Then religious and social practices, you must have seen that many a times people throw the dried flowers or all kind of materials which is used for puja and other rituals, instead of throwing them into a dustbin or something, many people follow the practice of throwing it into the water bodies, right? So even that causes water pollution. And lastly, withdrawal of water and drying up of water bodies are also one reason of water pollution. Okay, so that is all about the water that we have in this lesson. Next is soil. Now, soil is one more natural resource which is extremely important for our survival. How? Because see, plants need soil for their growth. If we don't have soil, we will not have plants on the earth. And in absence of plants, plants are the basic producer of food, right? The entire food chain depends on herbivores, or on autotrophs, that is plants, right? So if we don't have plants, the entire food chain will get disturbed, and we cannot imagine the existence of any other living organism. Fine. So for the survival of entire biodiversity, soil is extremely important. Now, what is soil? So soil is the uppermost layer of the earth's crust, formed by the continuous withering of mountains. Factors causing soil formation are parent material, time, climate, and organisms. We are going to see this factor one by one. Okay, so first of all, we'll see how the soil is formed. So the outermost layer of the earth is called the crust, and the minerals found in this layer supply a variety of nutrients to the life forms. But these minerals will not be available to the organism if the minerals are bound up in the huge rocks. When I say minerals are required for the growth or for the survival of life form, this minerals needs to be in some form which can be dissolved in the water or in some other thing, and it can be taken up by the life form. Imagine if all the nutrients are present in the form of mountain or in the form of huge rocks, will we be able to take up that nutrient? No. Like for example, doctors tell you कि you are having calcium deficiency, and if they give you a rock containing calcium, will you be able to take that nutrient? No. You need to have it in form of pills or in form of syrup or something like that, right? So similarly, now that is one example. So likewise, the minerals which are required for the survival of life forms, they needs to be in some particular format and not in the form of huge rocks. So over the long period of time, that is thousands and millions of years, the rocks at or near the surface of the earth are broken down by various physical, chemical, and some biological processes. And the end product of this breaking down is fine particles, which is also known as soil. Okay. Now let us see which are the factors that are responsible to make soil. First one is sun. I mean, when I say the withering of rocks or breaking down of rocks, so what causes this withering or breaking down of rocks? So the first factor is the sun. The sun heats up rocks during the day so that they expand. We all know that expansion is the outcome of heating. Whenever we heat something, the particular thing expands. So during the daytime, because of the sun's heat, the rock expands, but at the night, these rocks cool down and they contract. Since all the parts of the rock do not expand and contract at the same rate, this results in the formation of cracks. And ultimately, the huge rock break up into smaller pieces. So in this way, the sun can cause the withering of rock. Secondly, water. Now, water helps in the formation of soil in two ways. First is, water could get into the cracks in the rock formed due to uneven heating by the sun. Whatever cracks are formed because of the heating of sun, into those cracks the water can enter, and if this water later on, if it freezes because of less temperature, it can even make the cracks to widen up. Okay, so that is one way into cracking or weathering of rocks. And secondly, flowing water wears away even hard rocks over long period of time. If water flows over a big rock for a very long time, it can wear off that big and hard rock as well. You must have seen the shapes of different rocks under the river bank, okay, or into the river banks. Suppose if it happens that if you get to visit a place where a particular portion of river or any type of flowing water body is dried up because of the excessive heat or something, there you can see that the rocks and the pebbles which are under the into the into the bed, river bed, or into the bed of the water body, those rocks have special surface, smooth surface, right? That is because of the wearing by the flowing water. Fast flowing water often carries big and small particles of rock downstream. These rocks rub against the other rocks, and the resultant aberration causes the rock to wear down into smaller and smaller particles. The water then takes these particles along with it. Once it is broken down into small pieces, then water takes these particles along with it and deposit further down its path, and soil is thus found in places far away from its parent rock. Okay, the soil which is formed because of the flowing water does not remain at the same place, but it is taken away to a very far place from its parent rock. And then third one is wind. It in a process similar to the way in which water rubs against rocks and wears them down, strong winds can also erode rocks down. The wind also carries sand from one place to another like water does. And lastly, living organisms are also equally responsible. Living organisms influence the formation of soil. The lichens, you must have heard about this plant. Even in 7th standard when you studied about litmus, right? Litmus are obtained from lichens. So these lichens also grow on the surface of rock, and while growing they release certain substance that can cause the rock surface to powder down and form a thin layer of soil. Other small plants like moss are able to grow on this surface now, and they cause the rock to break up little further. The roots of big trees sometimes go into cracks into the rocks, and as the roots grow bigger, the crack is forced bigger, and in that process also many times the bigger rocks are converted into smaller particle, which leads to the soil formation. Okay, so these are four factors which are responsible for the formation of soil. Now let us see the soil composition. So soil is a mixture of organic matter. The basic components of soil are mineral, inorganic matter, water and air. Various types of soil are the clay soil, loamy soil, silt and sand. Okay, depending upon the percentage of its content, there are different types of soil which are present. Then comes a factor called humus. Now what is humus? So the organic constituent including the dried leaves, twigs, remains of plants and animal decompose to form the upper organic layer known as humus, and it plays a very important role in increasing the fertility of soil. If the humus content of the soil is more, then we say that particular soil is more fertile, and if humus content is less, then the soil becomes infertile. So it is very important that agricultural lands specially contains enough amount that they contain enough amount of humus in them. Okay, now let us see the next part, that is soil pollution. Now just like air and water, even the soil gets polluted. Let us see how. So the modern farming practices which involve the use of large amount of fertilizer and pesticide can lead to soil pollution, because the excess chemicals they get mixed with the soil and they can decrease its fertility. Then use of this substance over a long period of time can destroy the soil structure by killing the soil microorganisms that recycle the nutrients in the soil. Large amount of chemicals, if they are used into the soil, then even they can lead to the killing of small microorganisms. It also kills the earthworms, which are instrumental in making rich humus. You must have heard this, that earthworm can convert the normal soil into humus. Okay, so many a times the use of excess fertilizers or chemicals into the soil can be harmful for the earthworms. Many a times they are killed into it. Okay, and if number of earthworms becomes less, then amount of rich humus also becomes less. Also, the fertile soil can quickly be turned barren if sustainable practices are not followed. So, if the agricultural practices are not proper, okay, if the use of chemical into the agricultural practices is not limited, then even the fertile soil can become barren. Removal of useful component from the soil and addition of other substance which adversely affect the fertility of the soil and kill the diversity of organisms that live in it is called soil pollution. Apart from that, we have one more problem which is known to be soil erosion. You must have heard this term before. Soil erosion is something it is a term for the removal of top layer of soil. We all know that the top layer of the soil is the most fertile one, or the plants grow in the upper or the top layer of the soil, right? Only the bigger trees, their roots manage to get into the lower layers, right? But top layer is very important. So many a time this top layer of the soil is carried out by wind or by water or by some other factors, right? And this leads to the soil erosion. The soil that we see today in one place has been created over a very long period of time. However, some of the factors that created the soil in first place and brought the soil to that place may be responsible for the removal of the soil too. We have seen that the sun, water, wind, these are the factors which are responsible for the soil formation, right? But the same factors can be responsible for soil erosion as well. The fine particle of soil may be carried away by the flowing water or wind. If all the soil gets washed away and the rocks underneath are exposed, we have lost a valuable resource because very little will grow on rocks. If we like if in a particular area, if the top layer is completely vanished, okay, then what will be left? Only the rocks and pebbles. Can we grow anything fruitful in it? No. Very few trees grow on rocks, okay, or on such an infertile soil, right? The roots of plants have an important role in preventing soil erosion. The roots of the plant, they hold the soil, right? So if they hold the soil very well, the amount of soil that is carried out by the strong wind or by flowing water becomes less, and hence the roots of the plant can in a way prevent soil erosion. The large scale deforestation that is happening all over the world not only destroys biodiversity, but it also leads to soil erosion. Topsoil that is bare of vegetation is likely to be removed very quickly, and this is accelerated in hilly and mountainous region, because hilly and mountainous regions generally have very strong wind. So if number of trees are less over there, the soil will be free, right? If number of trees are less, the roots will not be there to hold the soil, so soil will be in a free state and it can easily be carried away to the other place with the wind or flowing water, right? And hence the soil erosion problem is more into hilly and mountainous region. This process of soil erosion is very difficult to reverse. Once the soil erosion take place, then it becomes very difficult to make the land fertile again, because we cannot bring that large amount of soil from one place and take it to the another infertile place. Okay, it is practically very difficult. Hence we must avoid soil erosion in order to preserve our agricultural land. Okay, so vegetation cover on the ground has a role to play in the percolation of water into the deeper layer too. uh, like I said that plants can prevent soil erosion. At the same time, the number of plants if the number of plants are more in a particular area, then percolation of water, that is seepage of water, absorption of water into the soil, that rate is also more. So if in particular area number of trees are less, then soil erosion will take place. And secondly, the underground water level may also get affected, because if number of trees are less, then the rate of percolation of water also becomes less. So how can we prevent this soil erosion? So there are three ways in which we can do this. First is prevent excessive grazing. Why we need to prevent excessive grazing? Because if the soil is covered with grass, then it will not be in the free state. Okay, so excessive grazing should be avoided, so that so that soil can be it can be bound to the roots of the grass at least. Okay, it will not be free to be carried away with the wind. And secondly, prevention of deforestation, and lastly, plantation of trees and plants. So preventing deforestation and following reforestation, that is planting more and more trees, are the only options which to reduce soil erosion. Okay, so this is all about the soil and water, which are abiotic component of the biosphere. Okay, and now the next part contains some biogeochemical cycles. Okay, and that we will see in our Zoom sessions. Fine, thank you.